Thank you for joining me on my soapbox today. My name is Mindy Prefling, and I am the Client Services Senior Manager for Spencer Ogden, a global energy and infrastructure recruitment agency. As global recruitment experts in energy and infrastructure, we're building an industry that impacts millions. We provide leading recruitment services to our clients and candidates, creating careers to power a sustainable future. The Soapbox Series is a podcast we've launched to have open discussions with thought leaders in the renewable energy industry to discuss the human element behind our industry and the challenges we face in recruiting, retaining, and promoting top talent, especially as it pertains to diversity, equity, and inclusion. My guest today is Emilie Wangerman. Emilie is the head of Business Development M&A for Lightsource BP, a global leader in the development and management of solar energy projects. Lightsource BP has a deep commitment to mitigating climate change by delivering safe, clean, and affordable energy, as well as maximizing the environmental sustainability and positive social impacts that their projects have. They call this approach responsible solar. On today's episode, Emilie and I discuss diversity in renewables and whether we've come far enough, how to go about improving diversity in organizations in the sector, when to use your connections and how Lightsource BP hires and retains their top talent. All right, Emilie, thank you for joining me on my soapbox today. I'd love for you to kick us off with a brief introduction to you and to Lightsource BP.
Great, thanks, Mindy. So my name is Emilie Wangerman. I work at Lightsource BP. I am a Senior Vice President of Business Development, so I lead business development for the Americas. And Lightsource BP is a utility scale solar and storage developer. We are located across 17 different countries around the world. Our headquarters is in the UK. We started in the UK in 2010, but in 2017, we moved into the US. And I was one of the first team members on the team there. We started pretty small. There was already a team organized when I joined, but I started in 2017 at the end, and I think I was employee 7. I'm now the third most tenured in the Americas team. So I've seen the growth. So at that point it was 7, now we are 150 in the US. The US is growing rapidly. We have about 20 gigawatts of projects, and we're across, I think, 20 different states now. We have about 3 gigawatts contracted with off-takers, and we have about 2 gigawatts operating or under construction. So from when I first started, where we had no projects, to now we've had this massive growth in the last 4 years. And it's been really fun to be a part of that. The business development team, my team's responsibility is to grow the business, to do the strategy. Where are we going in the next 5 years? And then how do we actually execute it? For instance, we work with our customers to contract projects. We also do M&A, so we acquire projects to help support our growth. And then we also have our power markets organization, which is our short-term transactions like energy trading, rec trading, capacity, reactive power.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty impressive growth for just 4 years. I want to unpack some of that because I know that with that kind of growth, there's a lot of challenge, I'm sure. But before we go there, I want to talk a little bit more about you and your story. So what was your entree into renewable energy?
So I got there a little bit differently. After undergrad, so I went to undergrad at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and I studied chemical engineering and psychology, which really describes my personality. You don't often hear about a psychology and chemical engineering going together, but I really like getting into the weeds on the technical side. I have really strong background in math and science, but then I also really enjoy people and working with people and understanding, how to develop them, understanding how to work with them. I've always grown up in sports, so really enjoy working on teams and being on teams. So there was really good pairing for me. After undergrad, I went to Intel Corporation, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Chemical engineers can kind of pick 2 pathways. You can go in, at the time, you could really go into technology, or you could go into oil and gas. And I decided I really wanted to go into technology. And when I worked at Intel, it was a great experience. They're really good at starting employees out and training them in in basic project management skills, basic engineering skills. And I still use all of those skills I learned at Intel because it just gives you a fundamental, it's like growing up to be an adult in the business world, even little things like really getting to know how to use Excel and all the tools and tricks that I still use today. So I spent several years at Intel, traveled around the world with them, actually lived abroad for several years in Malaysia and the Philippines.
Awesome.
And there had this amazing experience with working with people that I'd never worked with before. They'd never had a female leader before. And so it was really great experience for them to be exposed to a senior woman, but also for me to work with a group of people that really weren't used to a young, a young woman in a senior role there. So in Malaysia, there's three main cultures there. There's the Indian culture, the Malay culture, and the Chinese cultures. And there's various cultures within each, obviously, but broadly speaking, it's really three different main groups of people, and they really have grown and really started to adapt, and specifically in Penang, sometimes there was divisions across those, but at Intel, they worked really well together and everybody worked really well together, but it was a great experience of being able to learn how people find relationships, even though they haven't grown up together and they've really been divided, but they found a way to find solutions to work collaboratively together. And throwing in a person from the US really shook some things up at first, but they started to embrace me. And I really, really missed that. I missed that group, but I decided to leave Intel because I frankly just wanted to get out of the factory. I was in the factory every day. I was doing technology development, and I was ready for a change. I wanted to get more into business. And then I was also working in traveling, and my experience there, I really got an appreciation for what the US has when it comes to our grid and our overall electric system. And, I had an appreciation as well that we're still really running on a pretty dirty system globally. But when you look abroad, there's people that are, for instance, at my house in the Philippines, the guy was climbing up the wall to interconnect us to the system. And then we had a backup generator that was really filthy. And it was like all these things. And I was like, oh no, I think I want to be a part of this solution. I want to figure this out to address climate change. So I went back to grad school and I went to Duke University. And I studied business as well as I studied energy and the environment and focused on energy markets and renewable energy technologies. And after that, I went to PG&E. And so while I was actually at that program, it was a 3-year program at Duke, I was kind of sussing out where did I want to go in the future. And I worked at GE, for instance. GE has this amazing program. If you're looking to get involved in renewables and you haven't had that experience, the GE Renewable Energy program was a really great way to get exposure to the program. I really enjoyed it. I almost went to work there full time. My main decision of why I didn't and why I chose PG&E was because I was looking to get the true energy industry experience. I'd already worked for a company, like a technology company that was building something. And I was looking to get really on the energy side, on the policy side, understanding how to procure energy, how do people buy and sell? What is a distributed energy resource? And I knew I could really get that at PG&E. And so how did I get into the energy industry? I took this path I started in technology. I decided I specifically wanted to make a change. I went to grad school and forced the change by going and actually getting that second degree above the business school degree and actually studied energy, and then decided to go into PG&E where I could learn really everything across the energy industry, from gas to energy procurement to transmission and distribution to customer energy programs. And so I really had a good feel for what happens in a utility, but also across the energy industry. So that's how I started. And then if you want me to keep going, I can also cover how I'm at Lightsource now.
Yeah, actually, thank you. I really like how your background is, like, your story is very thoughtful. Like, it was something that was like it didn't just happen. Like, you were like, this is what I want to do and this is how I'm going to go get it, which probably is like, those skill sets are why you're successful in what you do in M&A, I imagine. So I would like to go there. Yeah, so I think for next, because you went from PG&E working in policy and procurement to Lightsource, and from what I understand it, I mean, business development M&A for renewable energy projects is maybe you utilize some of the background that you had from that you gained from PG&E, but I'm curious about that transition and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. So two things. I started with saying that I use every day what I used in engineering, and that's absolutely true. It creates this structure of how you think through a problem, how you work on a project, completing it on time, checking in with your team, asking the probing questions, not assuming you know the answer, but, really asking the famous 5 whys, like really probing to figure out what the problem is. And so I definitely use my engineering every day. And then I also think that makes me a little bit unique because I also understand the technology. I was literally building semiconductors. And so it's an interesting, as you go into solar, it's like, oh, hey, I remember all these conversations. And so it was good to have that background. But you're right that it was purposeful. As I went to business school, I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to stay in technology or if I really did want to fully transition into the energy industry. And in my mind, getting involved in renewable energy wasn't really getting away from technology. But I really had to figure out, what did it mean? For one thing, I learned, like, you can't just turn off all of the natural gas plants right away, that you'll have an impact on the electric system and the reliability on the system. And those were things that I just didn't know until I had a chance to really understand the industry. And so it was purposeful to get that training because I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to be able to sit in front of the people that had been around for 30 years and talk the same talk and be in the room and contribute. I'm not one of those people I am not a wallflower. I do not like to be on the outside of the room. And so I think it's important that if you're going to be in the middle of that room, that you have the detailed knowledge of what the actual energy industry is to be able to kind of talk the talk. And that's what I did when I went to PG&E. I learned the energy industry, and then I was prepared to shift into, or at least I felt I was sufficiently prepared to shift into Lightsource and the business development world. You're right, I had no business development background, but at the end of the day, business development and M&A, it's about negotiations. And if someone's considering a career change, you negotiate when you're an internal employee too, right? You're negotiating with your senior teams, your executive team, you're negotiating with your peers, you're negotiating why a change should happen. A lot of my career, including on the engineering side and at PG&E, was about change management. It was about, hey, we need to go to this, we need to make a change. It's going to be tough. Everybody's used to doing this for 30 years this way. How can we do it differently? And I think, you use all those same tools in negotiations because you're saying, okay, what does this person really want? What do they need? What are their walkaway points? What are our walkaway points? And then how can you find that solution together? And for me, that's why it's actually been a pretty smooth transition. I was a little bit nervous my first day. I remember my first day at Lightsource, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I getting into? And then you realize how much you learn just by being in the industry. I realized how much I brought to the table just knowing the importance of interconnection, understanding the interconnection process, understanding the energy procurement process. Being on the buy side and being on the sell side, it's really good to have both those experiences. And so I really quickly realized that just because I didn't have direct, solar business development experience didn't mean that I couldn't bring a lot to the table. And then expanding into M&A has been a natural fit because if we're a developer too, and we need to continue to grow. And so having conversations with developers and them seeing that we really know what we're talking about. My whole team is full of power marketers. So, we're people that have the experience in the energy industry. So we're not just selling a product, we're actually understanding how that product works and understanding how to best work with our customers. And then when we talk on the M&A side, I really do think it comes through that we're there to be a partner and be able to deliver quickly. And so it's, if you're asking how I got there, I think you just use those basic communication and project management skills throughout your career. And you have to be comfortable with learning and knowing you might not be the expert in the moment, but you can take the time and come up to speed pretty quickly, or at least that's what I've found has made me successful.
Great. I think you mentioned that negotiation is something that you do all the time with your colleagues, with your bosses. I mean, it's something, most of our communication is just a negotiation. I mean, probably with your with your children, with your husband,
Yeah.
with your
Yeah.
with your friends. So yeah, great. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Now, you mentioned you're not someone who's a wallflower. And I kind of want to go back into when you look around the room, who else you see. You're the SVP of Business Development and M&A for Lightsource, which is an executive leadership title. You don't find a lot of women, in my experience as a recruiter, at that level in business development or really in the industry. So I'm curious, when you look around the room, what does it look like? What's the makeup of the room?
Yeah, so I think Lightsource has grown a lot in this, this topic in diversity and inclusion since I started. So the first thing, when I started, it was a really great, people say use your network as you're considering your next steps. I really did. I reached out to my entire network. I reached out to friends. I reached out to extended network, and I was just starting to think about where I wanted to go. And I mention this because just getting in the door is often the hardest thing, is just getting, if you're looking to a career switch or you're looking to do an industry switch, using people that, even if they're remote, right? Like, they're a third person on your list, but you can get connected by that other person. That will help you start that conversation, and you can get a little bit farther ahead than just straight trying to, go in cold in an interview, because you really want them to know you, and you can do some prep work by talking to people and understanding it. And so I talked to a friend that I went to grad school with before, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about where to go next. I'm not really sure. I'm thinking about going into electric vehicles because I had that electric vehicle experience at PG&E, thinking about renewables. And, she said, hey, look, I actually have a position open. Do you want to come talk to the team? And for me, that really helped, because it wasn't like, come interview, it was come meet the team, see if this is a fit for you too. And so when I got there, it just felt really good. The team was really excited. It was small. It was, moving fast. And so for me, that was a really easy decision to join the organization. But as we started to grow, we were growing really quickly, and we had to hire really rapidly. And, if you have a lot of men on your team, they're going to tap their network, and their network may mainly be men, or it may be because the energy industry traditionally has a lot of men. And so, we started to get a little bit too, male weighted, I'd say. I don't know what the right term is, but the percentage was a little bit too much male, not enough female, not enough diversity in general. But we all kind of stopped and said, how are we going to change this? And one of the things that I did is with my friends, we started this group where we started meeting with the women. There weren't very many of us. And so, as the senior leaders, we were meeting with the women. And as new women came in, and especially in junior positions, we were talking to them and giving them this avenue to have conversations. And so that senior leadership coming from the other senior women and me, I think it really did help people create this safe space to talk about problems. And as we were in that conversation, we said, we also want to be advocates to make this change. And so our company made the decision to change and to grow. And so your question was, when I look around the room, what do I see now? I see a lot more. I just see much more diversity. I see much more diversity on my team. I'm really proud of my team. We have also, we have diversity in backgrounds. People come from backgrounds like, literature degrees to engineering to architecture. And, so it's that type of diversity, it's gender, it's ethnicity. And so it's just really important, levels of knowledge. So we have some really junior right out of university team members, and then people that have had decades of experience. And so I'm really proud of that team, because I look around and it's diverse and it's really inclusive. The team members, the most junior team members, have no problem speaking up and offering their ideas. And for me, that's a huge reward, because I've created and worked with my team to create a really inclusive organization. And then at the executive level, I'm really proud to say that in 2021, we had 42% of our executive level team members, which is our VPs plus our heads and higher, heads of groups and higher. And that's, 42% women. That's amazing. I think the average just in general, the US solar industry of, percent women is 26%. And then overall in Lightsource, in 2021, I think we hit 37, like a little over 37% women in our company in the US. So I'm just really proud of that. I think we made a conscious change. We did things differently in hiring, and I'm just proud of where we are today.
I'm glad to hear that. And actually, you kind of primed me for my next point, because I wanted to ask you, so I'm glad to hear that at Lightsource you look around the room and it sounds like you have a very diverse group, and it's something that you and the leadership team at Lightsource made a conscious effort to hire diverse folks into the business. But what about when you look around the room, when you're transacting with other developers or what have you, what do you see? Is it very diverse?
We have some improvements still in the industry. I often am the only woman on a call, and so it's sometimes a little bit of a downer. But I do think that people are heading in the right, trying to head in the right path. There are people like you, and there are others that you consciously work with, recruiters that have a focus on diversity. And I think that's really important. The only way we're going to solve this is if we actually focus and hire. And, we don't accept that, people say, just go to your network. And I said in the beginning, go to your network, but I would just stretch that. I'm saying, go beyond your close knit network, push to people that you kind of sort of know. And then from a hiring perspective, go beyond your actual network. Get comfortable that you may not know this person, but you see that their resume shows something in them, and that in interviewing process, you say, oh, you know what? They have it. They might not have 10 years of direct experience, but they have what we need. They have that, they have that attitude. They have the right attitude. They have tolerance for ambiguity. They're ready. They're driven. That's what we're looking for. At least that's what I'm looking for. It's not necessarily you have this perfect experience, because I didn't have the purpose business development experience. So it's really about being comfortable stretching on an employee and knowing that, sometimes it doesn't work out, but I have yet to see, I think maybe 1 or 2 times it hasn't worked out in my career, but most of the time people can adapt. Because if I go back to what I originally said, pretty much anyone that has good project management skills and good communication skills will be successful in almost any job that they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I'm a big fan of networking, and I've found all of my opportunities the same way, just like putting myself out there and talking to people, but I'm a recruiter, so that just comes naturally to me. Okay, so you mentioned, there could be some more diversity when you look around the room. Has that created any challenges for you as you've grown in your career and as you've developed in your career?
Yeah, one of the reasons I left one of my careers, I won't necessarily specify which company it was I felt that I was being held back. And I'm not sure if it was because of being a woman, or if it was because of being younger than the other team members, or if it was just because I didn't fit culturally. May have been a combination of all of those. But I'd say I took too long to figure that out. I learned a ton, and I didn't waste any time, as in from a learning perspective, gained a lot of knowledge. I still use that knowledge, but I don't think I was growing. I just don't think they saw me as a future leader. And even though they were saying they saw me as a future leader, and they were saying that these were opportunities, but I just didn't fit I didn't really fit the culture. And I took too long to figure that out, I think. And as soon as I left, I had a real appreciation of how much I didn't. And I think what I would encourage other people to think about is, if you're not happy in your job, you spend so much time there, just go somewhere else, because you will find somewhere that's better. And if you go to that next place and it's not that great, go somewhere else. Like, don't get stuck in a career that you hate every day, because you just don't need to do that to yourself. And it impacts your whole life. You come home grumpy, you feel stressed out more often. And for me, I think that I'm not sure if it had to do with any of the traditional diversity components, but I would say from an inclusivity perspective, I didn't feel very included. And I always felt like, going back to that wildfire comment, I was always being pushed to the outside of the room. And I was like, but I have all these great ideas, like I want to be in. And I mean, you can tell I'm kind of a high energy person, and to like sit back and be like, oh man, that's not the right information. It was hard. And so I think you need to find a place that, some people might not be that. Some people might want to just have a 9-to-5 job and get out, and that's okay. But for me, I wanted to be in it. I wanted to get my hands dirty. I wanted to be part of the decision-making process. And that's what I focused on, finding a place that made me feel included, and not just included, but like a part of the team, a valuable part of the team. So
yeah. You have to trust your gut on it. Like if you feel like something is off, it probably is, even if it's not intentional. But yeah, you need to kind of trust your gut and make a move. I agree. Why would you stay somewhere that you're unhappy just to make somebody else happy? I don't know. But we do it all the time. Yeah. I've definitely been there in my career.
Well, you feel, the reasons I stayed were, oh, it's just hard to find a new job. What happens if I don't find one? Or even little things like, hey, they had really good daycare, little things like that makes a difference. At the same time, all of those things fall away once you make that conscious decision to leave. You find a different daycare, you find new friends, you find new work. It makes your life easier once you make that conscious decision to start to look. And even if it takes you 6 months because you're not rushing to get out, then that's fine too, right? Like, you have to play it by ear, I guess, and you just have to feel what makes sense for you.
Okay, I want to take it back to Lightsource BP and the growth that you've experienced the last 5 years that you've been there. How has your team, I mean, you were the 7th employee, you said, how big is your team now, just on the business development side? And how big is Lightsource now?
So Lightsource globally is about 700 people, I think. And so, and I think when I started, it was around 200 or 300. So there's been a lot of growth at Lightsource in the Americas. I think I want to say we're about 150 now, and in the US, and then about 30 to 40 in Brazil. So we've had a lot of growth. It's actually really exciting to be a part of it. It's fun to say, do you remember that time when we were, all in one conference room for many, many weeks, and we were all sitting around one conference room working and functioning, and hey, can you hand me this? It's fun to be that small little group just trying to get that first project done, or sitting in offices where in one little lobby area we had like 6 different desks. It was like the lobby, so it's one of those things of, it's fun to be in that new company where you're starting up and everybody wears a lot of hats. And I was going out and getting land and negotiating PPAs, and so it's fun to be in that heyday. And it's really fun now because you see that we're bringing in these incredible experts that you're like, you didn't even know who Lightsource was a couple of years ago. When we first started the conversations in the US, we would talk to customers and they'd say like, what, light stock? Wait, what? Light, like Lighthouse? We were always called Lighthouse. No, Lightsource. And then we talk about it and like, okay, well, what's the deal with BP at the end? And then you have to explain, okay, BP took an investment in us in 2017 and upped it in 2019. But now people know the name, and it's kind of exciting that people are coming to work for us because they've heard how successful we've been in the last few years. And so it's been fun to be on that journey, but it is kind of incredible because a lot of that growth has been during COVID. And so I probably don't know now. I mean, I knew everybody, right? I was part of almost every interview when we were bringing in new people. Now we're just interviewing so many people. In my own team, I still know them really well, but in the broader teams, there's regularly people on the call. I'm like, I don't know who that person is. And so it's, good thing we have, systems. I like quickly look up who they are. Oh, okay, now I know who they are. And so it's fun to meet and then learn their backgrounds. I'm always looking on LinkedIn for our own internal team members now to say like, oh, okay, now I know where they came from. And so it's fun to be a part of that conversation, because then they're bringing new ideas, they're bringing new connections, new conversations. And for me, for a business development person, that's exciting because I'm like, hey, you already know this person. Can you put me in touch? Or, hey, I'm trying to, acquire this project. You worked there. Can you put me in touch? So that's exciting.
So it's funny because Spencer Ogden and Lightsource have a lot of similarities. Spencer Ogden's UK based. We were
Mhm.
founded in 2010. We
Yep.
started in the US, I want to say in 2014 or 15. And I joined our Denver office, which launched in 2015. I joined in 2016, and I have a very similar experience. And I think, like, in my own experience, the reason why I've loved being a part of it from those early days, we were actually in a Regis office. So yeah, similar. It was
Okay.
like there were
Yep.
7 other people in the room,
Yep.
and only a few of us have, I'm the second most tenured person in the Denver
Okay.
office.
Yep.
So I can relate to a lot of the things where, like, in the beginning, you're just kind of doing anything and everything.
Mhm.
And then over time, your role evolves, and you're putting your actual blood, sweat, and tears into the growth of your position and the company. And then when you
Yep.
come out at, where we're at right now, it sounds like there's like, or for me, I know there's like a sense of propriety. Like, I helped to build this. I
Yeah.
had an impact, and maybe things looked a little bit different. We didn't know where we would come out, but here we are, and I'm really proud of the contributions I've made.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun to see, like, the first project that I named was Wildflower Solar. And I named it by my mom's backyard, my mom and dad's backyard, because they put me and my friends to work in high school, clearing out a back field in their backyard and putting down wildflowers. And when I went to the site at first, I was like, wow, this looks like my parents' backyard. And I was like, okay, I'm going to name this project Wildflower. And now it's operational, and it's working with SMUD, and we're talking about next projects there. And it's just really fun to be like, oh, actually, hey, mom, there's a project named after you. It's just exciting to be a part of that. And now it's a little different, we're a big business, but to
Yeah.
be at a senior level at this point, I still can make those changes. I can still be a part of, where are we going next? Where are we growing next? Are we growing in, Minnesota and Canada, in, et cetera, et cetera? Where are we going next? And to have gotten to a senior level, it took a lot of work. I didn't give up when I was told no, or, oh, this other person that is a better fit for it because they have more direct experience. Well, why don't you just give me a little bit of a chance and I'll prove it? And, I still think at times I've been, I probably could be a chief commercial officer right now. A lot of my peers are chief commercial officers, and I'm hoping that my next step will be a C-suite position. And I'm expecting my next step is a C-suite position. But those are the kind of things of not giving up just because you don't get it, even though you think, what, others that have the same experience, that are doing the same scope, actually are in those roles. But it doesn't mean you just give up, because if you give up, you're probably not going to get what you want. And so I'm hanging in there, and I'm finding opportunities, and keeping my team interested. We started as origination. We now have, origination and M&A and the strategy and the power marketing. So if you can't grow up, you can grow out. And that's what I kept doing to keep it interesting and to keep learning.
Well, as we established in the beginning of this conversation, you're very intentional about your career goals and plans. So if you have a goal to get to the C-suite, my sense is in just a couple of years' time, that's where you'll be.
Thank you. I hope so.
So I want to talk about, because it's obvious that the industry is growing at a pretty fast clip right now. What kind of growth expectations do you have for your team, for the business development M&A team?
You mean from a scope of work, or number of team members, or
I guess
just
both, actually. Like, what are your plans? What's your department's plans for the future? Because I know that Lightsource has some pretty hefty goals on a year-on-year basis. So what does that mean for your team? And then how does that translate into hiring needs for your team?
Yeah, so we've probably heard Lightsource has said publicly that we have a 25 by 25 goal, so 25 gigawatts by 2025, having completed financial close. So that is a pretty audacious goal, given that one of the first moves outside of the UK, which the company was really started in a feed-in tariff program in the UK. And those were much mild programs, projects, 5 megawatts and under. And so in the US, we started to really grow scale. And now globally, there's a lot of big projects. But that's still an audacious goal. And the exciting thing is I can see the trajectory there. I really think we will achieve it. But that does mean we're hiring across the company. We're hiring in business development, we're hiring in M&A, we're hiring in power markets on my team. And then across the board, construction is doing lots of hiring because we have a lot of projects heading into or under construction now, project development. So the land and permitting team, they have a lot of growth as well. So there's across the board, legal, everybody is hiring. So it's exciting to be able to say, hey, are you looking for a role? Come check out our website. So for sure, we're growing. For my team, we have done a good job growing with the pace and preparing for it. Since we're the front of the business, we tend to know what's coming. And so we tend to hire first. And so the team is pretty set up. I think we're getting into I think we're 18 or 19 at this point. And we're going to continue to grow. We'll probably be, 25 by the end of the year. We balance who we hire. So we have analysts, senior analysts, managers, senior managers, directors, senior directors, VPs, SVPs. And so it's important to keep that balance because, everybody brings something new to the table and everybody has different skill sets. And if you bring people in the junior path, they have a clear career path at Lightsource, and specifically within our group, they can continue to grow, but they can also work on other areas too, right? So if someone says, no, I'm not really sure, I think I'm interested in project development too. Okay, well, let's get you exposure to them and see if that is a fit for you. And so it's before when we were smaller, we couldn't really do that. When you were hired, you had to do your own job. Now we're starting to look for ways for, could somebody rotate? Could somebody rotate into a chief of staff type role? Those are the kind of things that we're now doing more consciously in career development as we've gotten bigger. And so for my team, every time I talk to them, so for my direct reports, I have weekly meetings with them, and we mainly talk about their development and their team's development. And so it's there's other meetings to have conversations about projects and problems and things like that, but really it's about how are things going with you? What help do you need from me? And, how is your team doing? Are they getting the staff they need, the support they need? Are you giving them the guidance they need? And then, that trickles down to the rest of the organization. So hopefully, at least what I've heard from different reviews is, our team is thoughtful and knowledgeable, and the team is enjoying working in our own organization. So it's a really long way to say we're growing, and if people are interested, we could find a spot for them. If there's a right timing, we don't say, okay, we're hiring 4 people and that's it. We really try to figure out where our gaps in strategically hire as people shape up, right? So there's one employee that I can think of that she's just been killing it. She came in with a little bit different background. She had an EPC background, and we're like, okay, she doesn't have any business development background, but she's doing just so well. And she's starting to get direct customer engagement now. And that's where you say, okay, well, we'll probably have to fill under her now, because now she's no longer an analyst level. She's now moving towards a manager level. And that's an example of, okay, then we're going to hire in behind her. And then there's other people, we have this big gap here from a leadership perspective. We should probably hire a more senior person to bring that to the table. And that we actually just did. We just hired someone to cover our West business development because we really wanted someone more senior that brought relationships to the table. So it kind of depends. That's how we hire. It's more about fit, not necessarily about a particular number of employees.
Yeah, it's more strategic and looking at the individual versus just looking at like the gap that you have.
Yeah. Which we do both, right? Like if they have a gap, but if they bring something to the table, we can help them close their gap too, right? So
yeah. So I want to with it's a tight talent market. You just mentioned your team's looking to grow by, I can't think of the percentage right now, about 20%, 15, 20%, whatever it may be. That's pretty significant growth still. And while the industry is continuing to grow, other companies have the same hiring expectations. So what kind of challenges do you see? I mean, not only in just hiring for people for your team, but even just retaining the folks on your team, because everybody on your team is getting called by recruiters out there and,
Yes.
internal, external, they're getting courted. So what are you doing for attrition and for retention and for recruiting new talent?
Yeah, so I think a couple things at a company level. The company's doing a good job of acknowledging that there is this, transition in the market, and because Lightsource has done so well, people are interested in hiring Lightsource employees. And so, I think there was a little bit of slow movement there of, oh no, they'll stay because they really like us. Well, yes, and they also like getting paid a lot more money, or getting an increased scope. So I think we've come around to saying, okay, how can we also make sure we're retaining our employees? And so we're doing that from monetarily, but also through what we were talking about giving them opportunity to grow and giving more clear career paths and career trajectories, and saying, okay, do you want to go kind of on the technical ladder? Do you want to continue to be an individual contributor? Or do you want to be more in the manager role? Let's get you some management training. We've introduced a program that I participated in called Brilliant Leaders, which has been really great because it's giving the leadership direct experience, so through training, but then also in on-job training as well, when you actually take a project, and it's almost like a mini business school degree. And I went to business school, but it's fun to be around your colleagues getting that same experience as well. And those are the kind of things that, like, if you help people continue to grow and see that they're getting a benefit of staying and they're enjoying their job, at the end of the day, most people stay because they like their boss, right? And I think if you can get the like their boss, and then also they like their jobs, and they see themselves continuing to grow, I think you will retain people. You also have to accept that, like, you may lose some people, right? And for me, I always talk to my employees in my team of just like honest with them. And if they say, hey, I'm thinking about leaving. Okay, well, let's talk about why. And, are there things that we can do at the company to keep you? And if they decide to leave, that is their choice. And I'm proud of them, especially if they get promoted to a bigger role, because, first of all, the energy industry is really small, and I'll probably be working with them again.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it's exciting that because they worked at within Lightsource, or with whatever point in my career I was, because they worked with me and they worked on those experiences they've had, I'm really proud of them that they've taken that next step. And, it feels good to know that people are continuing to grow in their career, even if it isn't with us. But at the end of the day, it is important to retain people because, to grow, we have to have that knowledge and that success and that efficiency you gain from people that stay. And so we'll bring in new talent, but we also have to make sure we take care of and retain our own talent. So it's a combination, I would say, of, retention bonuses and making sure we're staying at market with salaries, but also that extra training and that thought on their careers. Do they want to shift to a different scope of work? And for my group, because we have a lot of little different types of scope, M&A, BD, power marketing, strategy, they're able to move around in those. And so I also think it helps them get a broader experience so that they can boost their resume as well.
Yeah, it can't just be about the money. And if you open up that dialogue, when you see what's happening in the market, it's better to be proactive about those conversations, initiate it with the people on your team, talk about how they're doing, do kind of like a temperature check. And then that way you can actually you're showing your employees that you care about retaining them. And I agree, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about the attraction piece? Yeah.
I think that, at the end of the day, as long as that employee has had a chance to, if they really do want to stay, share what's, making them hesitant or why they're thinking of leaving. And if you can resolve that for them, a lot of times they will stay, and that's great. But I'm also not going to force someone, I'm not going to say, oh, here's some X amount of money to kind of make them feel like they have golden handcuffs, because then they're not going to be happy in that role anyway. And so you need to balance and be very truthful with them of like, is this the place you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Then let me help you figure out how we can keep you. And so I've always found it's just about being transparent and saying, tell me what you really miss about, what's this new role giving you that we weren't at the time, and then seeing if we can close that gap, rather than just, it's at that point in time, it's not about selling, or at least, I don't know. I don't really think of business development as sales. Like I think of sales more as like, oh, I'm going to do whatever possible to get you to get this deal done. Where for our team, it's more about like, let's figure out what really works for you. And so in this conversation, it's the same thing. Like, let's both try to find a way that works for both of us. So
yeah, like a more consultative approach.
yeah.
Because I mean, if you've ever had to let someone go, or if, like you said, when somebody leaves, usually it's better for both parties at the end of the day. And even though it's an uncomfortable conversation, whoever is initiating it, once it's over, both parties are going to feel a lot lighter. Or you bring in someone new who's maybe got fresh eyes and excited to be there. If the person's just not happy, then it's not good to just like keep dragging them along, or it doesn't serve them just to make X thousand more on their compensation either. They'll just leave in 6 months instead of today.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what about the attraction piece? Like how is that going for you and your team?
I think it's going pretty well, but I'd probably have to ask people that are coming in. But we for my team in particular, we have been hiring throughout, and getting lots of really good candidates. Sometimes it's tough to say, hey, there's 6 really good candidates here. And so when you look at them, you say, okay, what differentiates them? What are they going to bring to the team? They bring, okay, this person brings a little bit of background in this region that we didn't have before. And so, when you're talking to them, you say, is that something you actually want to work on? Because you don't want to assume they might actually be trying to get rid of that. They might be trying to get away from that experience. And so having those conversations, I think, at least from based on the feedback we've gotten, is that that's what they value, that we're talking to them about their roles rather than assuming we know what they want to do with their roles. And we've also, we have a really good brand in the market. At least that's what I've been told. People respect Lightsource and what we're doing and how we're growing. We're delivering on our commitments. We have good relationships with our customers. And so I think people are just interested in joining us, which is an easier time. It's, you're kind of pushing people through an open door, which is, I don't know if I want to use that saying again, but it's nice to not have to kind of, at least pulling them in. It's nice that they're excited to come in the door themselves.
Yeah, and Lightsource, you have a good reputation for the company, but it's because you have state-of-the-art people, and good people attract good people. So when you look around the room and, if you're interviewing, that can be just in and of itself a way to attract good talent.
Absolutely. And, going back to the diversity and inclusion component, I can't tell you how many employees candidates that are deciding to become an employee have said, do you know how much it made a difference that 3 of the 5 interviewees were, diverse employees, existing employees, and, that you have senior women at the top makes a huge difference. Even if they're not women themselves, it makes a difference to them knowing that we're not just saying we care, but that we're actually showing we care. And in the energy industry, that doesn't always happen. And so I think that, it's been, again, an easy conversation because of the work that we've done. The more people that you bring in that have a unique viewpoint or a different background, it's easy to then have that next conversation, because they can be like, oh, I get it. I recognize that history, that career history that you've had, that's something that I've had, and I can relate. Oh, I can see myself working here now. And so it's always easier to have that conversation when they can see themselves in somebody else in that current role.
Yeah, I've lost candidates for the other reason, that they've only interviewed with all of the same kind of people, and they're like, you know what, I don't think diversity, they say it's important, but I don't see that it's important because everybody I interviewed was a male. And I don't want to be the only female on the team.
Yeah. it's not fun to be the only I mean, I went to a Catholic school that was started as a all boys school, and only fairly, before I started was converted over to both boys and girls. And so I was used to being all boys. And then I went to engineering and I was used to being around all boys. And then I went into, technology, which was almost all boys, and an engine, so I've kind of been used to that. At the same time, it does make a difference to not be the only woman in the room. And, I almost remember I would fight it before. I'd be like, oh, that's not true. I'm fine. And I am fine. I can sit in a room and be just as successful. But it is kind of nice to see that you're not the only one that's different, right? And so anyone that's experiencing that should know that you can find a company or help shape a company that makes you feel like you are not the only one that's different, that everybody's a little different in that room. And therefore it brings something new to the table. And if you get in those rooms, now when I am in that situation, I sit there and I'm like, I'm going to change this because this isn't working for me. And it's like, it's nice to be at that level where you can say, nope, I'm not okay with this. And I'm going to say I'm not okay with this. And I'm going to advocate, because I guarantee I'm not the first person to think this. I might be the first person that's now comfortable saying it. And I didn't used to be comfortable speaking up, but I am now probably too comfortable saying, you know what, we need to change. And here's why we need to change. And I'm happy to be a part of finding that solution to make a change. Like, I'm not just sitting back and, blaming and saying there's a problem. I'm saying, like, let's find the solution, and I'll be part of it. I'll be a part of finding that right fit and fixing this problem, because, it's more fun. It's more fun to be in a group of people that are just more welcoming. And that's the true definition of inclusivity. So.
Well, and that's what you did when you first joined, because you said at first there wasn't any diversity. You looked around the room and made that observation. Maybe it wasn't just you exclusively, but Lightsource made that observation and then came up with a solution for it. This needs to change. And then, it doesn't happen overnight, but if you purposefully and consciously put in action to affect change, then eventually it will improve.
And I would say Lightsource in general was always pretty good at diversity at the corporate level. And even in the US, when we started, one of the founders was a woman. And so it wasn't that there wasn't diversity. I think as you start to really grow really quickly, you can realize you skew that really fast if you're not intentional with how you're hiring. And so I would just say that, like, it is okay to stop a process, even if you're really busy and you're growing really fast and you say, you know what, I need to hire now. Intentionally stopping the process and fixing it is just as important, because you're setting a precedent that's hard to come back from. And it took us, 2 years to recover from that. And so it's one of those things of, had we stopped sooner and had I had the courage to force it to stop sooner, I think, I don't know how, I don't have control over everything, obviously, but I think the more people that could intentionally stop the process before it would become to the point where you need to work even harder to get there. So if you start right, that's great. If you didn't start right, it's okay to stop immediately and fix the problem, rather than saying, oh, it's too late, it's not a problem. No, it's always going to be a problem until you actually intentionally make a change.
Yeah, it just may take longer to correct the longer that you wait, but at least you're speaking up about it.
Exactly.
Well, I feel like we could probably keep going for hours, but I'll stop here to save you the time or give you some time back. And I really appreciate you joining me today and participating. I have one more question. I like to run a segment at the end called "What's in it for me?" So, because you are hiring and Lightsource is hiring, why should people consider joining Lightsource BP?
Well, it depends on which area they're working in. So, if they're working on my team, they should come because it's exciting to be a part of the front end of a very fast moving, growing business. It's exciting to learn from people that have been doing it for many years and brand new people that are coming in. So for me, it's just exciting to be, I've said exciting like 18 times because it's a hot, fast moving. If you're looking for a fast moving company that you can grow quickly within, if you're an energetic and eager person that is self-driven and you can find a way through the ambiguity, then you're going to be a really good fit. In some of the other parts of the organization, I mean, the construction team is doing gigawatts every year. I mean, that's not very typical. And so that's a great example to get experience. There's a lot of people coming in that haven't had as much experience, but they grow. I can think of one person that he hadn't really led a lot of big projects, and he's now one of their biggest leaders in the construction team. And so I think it's an example of you can find a spot and you can grow quickly. And I guess that was the same answer for my team as well. So I think it really is about being a part of a company that is, eager to grow and really has a fun culture. There's one of my team members, he's always saying it's the best company he's ever worked at. And he always says, and that's just so fun to hear him say that. I don't know. I guess it might be true for me too. I mean, I haven't actually thought about it, which is ironic, but he is always saying that. And his main reason is because we have a really inclusive culture. And when problems arise, we're all on it. We're all in there. We're like, okay, how do we solve it? What do we solve it? It's not a blame game. It's not, oh, this person said that. And even if that happens, I think we quickly course correct. Because in the moment you can feel like, oh, I'm just, bothered by blah, blah, blah for doing this. But at the end of the day, we all know we have a mission to get to that 25 by 25. And it's fun to just be, sharing that mission. And so if you want to be part of a clear growth goal, come join us.
You know your why.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Emilie. I really appreciate your time. This has been great. I look forward to getting this episode out so everyone else can enjoy it too.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Mindy. It's a pleasure.